Hello, I'm Dan Brenton. Welcome to the Connection podcast series. In this, the fifth session that we're recording with Neil Osment from NOA, we're going to be looking at automation within the modern corrugated box plant, and specifically looking at why European and North American box plants are looking so heavily at automation, particularly within the converting process, and what impacts the latest generations of robotic feeders and materials handling systems are having on the box plant of the future. Neil, welcome back. Thank you. Great to see you again. Session number 5. Now, we threw out a little bit of a hook at the end of our last
teaser. Teaser, Dan.
Yeah, so we threw out a little teaser at the end of the last one, and we were looking at probably the idea of automation. You know, is this the big future that the industry needs? I mean, it's been quite interesting, listening to some sort of financial commentators over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we're still seeing sort of rebound within the stock markets, and of course we know from our own industry, the corrugated industry, that that volumes have been held in good stead. Some producers are running at 110%, don't know which way to turn, and what's been really interesting is talking to some of the manufacturers like the Duca Group and MEPI and some of these big materials handling companies, talking about the importance of automation within the manufacturing environment. So let's start drilling down through some of the reasons. What are the compelling factors as to why modern manufacturers in North America and Europe are really starting to turn very aggressively towards automation?
Yes. I mean, we talked about this session is about the 20s and what are likely to be the main driving factors in the roaring 20s. Well, I think inevitably I mean, in all the time I've been in the corrugated industry, which is 35, 40 years, the drive on cost has always been there. And every decade, people have been trying to find another way. And I think it's going to be, in this decade, it's about automation. It's about driving the numbers of people involved in handling corrugated packaging downwards again. I think that there was a description of Industry 4.0, this idea of actually embracing digital technology. I don't mean digital printers. I mean about not just digital printers, but the use of information being able to be passed very quickly. So it was a very efficient use of information. Now it's about how can factories be more efficient. And there's no doubt that materials handling has been a very large part of it. I mean, if you looked 20 years ago, the idea of rollers, people used to walk on or not walk on the rollers that used to transport product, and it was they were free wheeling. Then this fantastic blue blanket that was used, this material that allowed corrugated stacks to be able to be moved around the factory without being shaken to bits as rollers used to do. That revolutionized the industry, and it meant that more and more companies were able to look at that. Well, I think most factories now have some form, even sheet plants have got some form of blue conveyor systems in their factories. But now it's about how intelligently that can be used. And if you look, there's automatic breakers that are being used, and the whole integration of all of that, I think there is a golden opportunity for factories, and will help reduce the numbers of people that are working in factories. And why is that? Why is that inevitable? I think the pressure on cost of factories continues to be huge. We were talking in our last podcast about reshoring and offshoring and reshoring. Well, I think reshoring won't happen unless the Western world, North America and Western Europe, reducing its cost base, because otherwise the cost of the product overall will still not be competitive versus other parts of the world. So it's vitally important that this next move happens. I think there's some cases for why it might occur in some countries, and I don't know whether that we should raise, well, I'll raise it now anyway. I think inevitably with the Brexit discussion, I think that's likely to cause the UK specifically to have to look at its own cost competitiveness. So I think automation is compelling for the UK alone in order to be able to be competitive with products, and therefore the products, how they're packaged.
And Neil, if you look at you know, what we're talking about here very much is data. Okay, so you know, you've really got to examine you know, is your plant scheduling system and you know, all of your infrastructure for data management, is that there? The ability for the corrugator to be talking seamlessly with the converting machinery, because there's no doubt that, you know, as pack sizes reduce, order quantities reduce, you know, the impact of digital print, meaning that you can produce literally 50 pieces if that's what you want to do. Of course, that's going to put an awful lot of strain on the physical converting department, because it's not just about you know, producing the order. You've got the inks to think about, you've got the dyes to think about, you've got the flexo plates to think about, and of course that's where automation is really going to come to the fore, right?
You're absolutely right, and I mean, what you've just indicated there. What is the driving factors to change now? The driving factors have been that the order sizes continue to get smaller. Pack sizes are smaller because we're buying more products on the internet, and you know, that the dreadful photographs of, you know, one apple inside a massive cardboard box, so that the cardboard box has been under huge scrutiny. So smaller pack sizes, smaller run length, and as you say, the print runs are becoming very, very small, and digital print has allowed that to continue. And the automation that you talk about, the ability to be able to swiftly get information because of digital transfer of information is excellent. But the other thing is that smart companies that are supporting the corrugated industry are there. They always have been, and they've been using technology so that you can actually have remote servicing of the equipment and machines, whether it be a corrugator, whether it be conversion equipment, or whether it be ancillary, what might be regarded as ancillary systems, you know, on the conveyor and breaker systems, where all machines could be looked at and monitored. So, and the relationships between key suppliers and large corrugated manufacturers are very good, and as a result of that, it's allowed new systems and new ways of working to develop. So, and I see, and so that's business as usual at the moment, where we have companies who aren't the manufacturers, company suppliers are talking to the machines and updating software and doing that. And then there's, I think, the responsiveness of those companies as well to support their customers in terms of servicing, planned maintenance. So those terms, which would be meat and drink for the corrugated industry within their businesses, actually planned maintenance and help in emergency are being offered by these service companies that support the corrugated industry. And I think particularly in Europe and in North America, that's going to be a huge springboard for this move in automation.
And Neil, I was talking with Mike and Trainer on one of our podcasts recently, and we were talking about the fact that, you know, it's not a sexy industry. We don't attract the next generation of, you know, sort of operators who, you know, let's face it, who would ever think that they would finish school or college and have a career running a flexo folder gluer. But I mean, this is a real issue that I think Western Europe and North America face. It's almost the de-skilling. So do you feel that automation actually enables us to continue growing our plants, but with fewer skilled people?
Oh, well, I think, as you rightly say, the attractiveness of the industry, and whether it be corrugated or whether it be folding cartons. I mean, the same issue. And I remember our work at ECMAR. You know, they have a big problem trying to attract people, and they try and make sure that they have great training programs to look after them. But I think your point, it's not a sexy industry. What is happening, of course, is that the people that are in the industry have to be well qualified. I mean, there might be some element of programming. You know, PLC engineers are becoming more prevalent in the industry. So actually, I think it is a great industry for engineering, and will need to be, because we need to be able to program machines. I think it's also very interesting that, yeah, I mean, I think we give ourselves a hard time. It's been an amazing industry, and I think because of, we talked about this before about shelf-ready packaging, that's brought us as at a level with brand owners. And so I think at the front end, I think we do very well, and we do attract people, and it's a well-regarded industry. But I think within the factories, it's hard to attract people into the industry. But what will happen now is we have to have a smaller workforce in there, and therefore, as you say, it drives automation.
And Neil, let's sort of round up this session, because obviously I know you do a lot of work and sort of studies for ICA, as well as for ECMAR on the folding carton side. What are the stats starting to show us? You know, when we start talking about, you know, automation, how do you put it in sort of the context of, you know, global figures and global numbers?
Yeah, I mean, one of the numbers that we used to talk about was about turnover per man and you know, per person, and there's no doubt that figure has been increasing, and it's going to rocket in the 20s. In these roaring 20s, then the pounds per person, or the dollars per person, or the euros per person, or any other currency per person is going to rocket in the 20s as a result of certainly direct labour, as a result of automation. So, and in terms of statistics, just another interesting thing that I was doing some work recently where we were looking at the economy in a particular country, and then we were looking at the statistics of corrugated, and the economy of that country went like this, rapidly down, back up again. But corrugated continued like this. So a global statistic for corrugated is we actually have bounced back amazingly. So that's good, but it has just put more pressure on being able to be more productive and be able to get more out. And I can see next year already the pressure's on to be able to be more productive, and automation is going to inevitably, I think, be driven even harder and even sooner. I mean, we see a lot of people talking about investments that they're going to make, and there's money. I mean, we've seen it recently. A major company said they're looking to raise a lot of capital. I don't think that's actually to purchase another company. I think it's to invest in their plants. So I see the moves already. Major companies are going to invest in some form of automation.
Well, Neil, thank you for your observations. I think it's perfectly summed up by a webinar that we conducted recently, where we were talking to some of the big manufacturers, you know, Bob Screw, Mitsubishi, you know, some of these big names who are producing high-speed case makers, and I challenged them and I said, guys, you know, we're talking about, you know, shorter orders and smaller pack sizes. Why are we developing high-speed case makers that are running, you know, 30, 50,000 an hour? And for them, it was really quite clear. They're saying, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're on a, you know, a Dongfang or a Bobst or a BW Paper Systems. It doesn't really matter. What's important is getting the material through the machine. And you know, when you look at automation, we start talking about robots that do not need a break. Yeah. And I think also as an industry, we've got to examine ways in reducing workplace stresses, injuries relating to, you know, what we would call heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So Neil, thank you ever so much indeed. as always, absolutely fascinating chatting to you, and we'll look forward to reconvening in due course.
Great to see you, Dan. Thanks very much.
Take care.